Now, here's Andrew McClintock, who is he's an analytics guy, and he put this out yesterday. This was after the top 25 went up, and I talked to Adam a little bit by text earlier. He's going to join us next week. Now, here's what he said about the top 25. Now, everyone can have their part of this and, digest it and discuss it or be, oh, my God. Well, he said, according to my power index, that's his power index, not an opinion, but the power index, these teams are ranked too high in what is the AP top 25. And he goes, Notre Dame, Baylor, Oregon, Oregon State, NC State, USC, Michigan State, Pittsburgh, Kentucky, Wake Forest, and Houston. That doesn't mean they're like 5 or 6 spots or 10 spots too high or whatever it might be. He just basically, based on his index, 1 through 25, these schools are higher than what his index shows.
All right. I mean, I don't know what his formula is, so I'll trust his word on that. Does he have a tweet that says, hey, these are the teams that I think are too low? Do you know that? Because, I mean, that's half the top 20.
He's on his way out of town, and so he said he was going to try to get that to me.
I mean, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, there's not much there to that other than he just thinks they're too low, so I don't really have much to chew on with that. But, yeah, I guess I'd be interested to see who he thinks in the 11 or more that should be higher are. But without that, yeah, I don't know.
What do we normally do when a poll comes out? What do we? Which of these two do you do first? Who's too high or who's too low?
I like, honestly, with the preseason poll, I don't really get too into the weeds on it. It's the preseason poll. It's based on absolutely nothing to do with anything but what's on paper and a little bit of what happened last year. So, I'm doing my best to cover Baylor as closely as possible, and there is a lot to like that's coming back from last year. There's also a lot to like from this offseason, but do I know that puts them over the top of Oklahoma right now? I mean, yeah, I think it might, but I don't know that for sure. Does that put them over the top of Texas or Texas Tech? Yeah, it probably does, but I don't know that for sure. So, it's all just a guessing game. So, I think the week 1 preseason poll, okay, that's your opinion, but
what do you normally
there's nothing to go off of.
It's a preseason poll. We've been through that. It doesn't matter, but I still think that it's a poll that we discussed. Do you look at who's too high or too low first?
I look at probably who's too high. I mean, just for example, what I look for is too high was probably teams that I think probably shouldn't be ranked at all, like that are there on name. That's the first thing I look for. Is, where's Notre Dame and A&M and Texas and, does Florida State or Nebraska sneak in there because, they closed out well because they were good in the 90s. For years it was how many, who's going to say this is the year for Michigan? Now it finally was the year for Michigan to win the Big Ten last year. But those are the things I look for, and I'm curious about. USC was one of those teams. Those are the things I look for to see if the national people think that these teams will be relevant again, and then I wonder why. Like, what do they think that I don't think or know that I don't know? Those are the things I look for. But I don't put much weight behind it because, again, there's going to be a bunch of people in a room at the in Grapevine at the Gaylord deciding what happens later on that makes this all inconsequential.
All right, we saw who he thought was too high. Here is who he thinks, based on his numbers, in his opinion, are too low. Now, with Texas, they're not ranked, so he might have them at 24, 25. Penn State, Tennessee, Florida, they weren't ranked. Ole Miss, Iowa, UCLA, and Texas. Those were the ones he said, not as many that are too high. And he might have about half the poll, which is just exactly where it needs to be. So,
see, I wonder about Penn State a little bit in that they kind of confuse me because I think they have a really good coach. Might be a little bit overrated, by other teams, but he's a really good coach in James Franklin. Hasn't really done the big things yet, but he's a good, consistent coach. They have a quarterback who might be okay, but might not. Their defense should be okay, but they lost a good skill player last year. Their offense was abysmal most of the year. So I don't know. I really don't know about them. That's a confusing team to me.
Well, and also think, what is underrated?
Yeah.
What is overrated? Is it that you don't belong in the top 25? Is it that you don't belong in the top 10? Is it that you're not going to win 10 games, you're only going to win 8? What's overachieving? Is it that you're expected to win 6, but he actually thinks you're going to win 8, and you're not in the top 25, but you'll be in that? Or you're in the back half, but you should be in the top 10? You know, I mean, there are questions there to kind of narrow that down. So, I mean, yeah, just on the surface, sure. I mean, those teams are better than whatever ranking they're at or not ranked, but, like, to what degree? I mean, is Texas a top 10 team, or are they just 24? You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, I'm just curious about that part of it. But, yeah, I think everybody's got strong opinions about who they think is overrated right now or who they think is underrated right now. And I'm just at the point where I am so thankful that in less than 2 weeks we're actually going to see that. Because I get that this is part of the preseason and it's the polls, and I'm sure that there are some people out there that are squeezing every amount of juice they can out of this one piece of media that we're handed, you know, right in the build-up to the season. It's fun to see the AP and the coaches and the Super 16 or whatever else come out and all these award lists and everything. But, yeah, I mean, ultimately I think we're all here to see what actually occurs, and the build-up is great. But because of all the extracurriculars going on, it feels like we've been building up this season for like 9 months now, because it's never really taken a break, you know?
You know why? Because we've been building it up, but we've also had so much that's outside of the game.
That's what I'm talking about.
We had the drama of realignment and much, much more. And so it does seem like it's been the longest offseason, and yet it's never really been I don't even know if there was an offseason at all. All right, so that's that.